Today we will start with this master who leads to realization. Today's thought of the day is remembrance should be in a way that we feel the thought of remembrance oozing out from the objects everywhere. I'll play Babuji Maharaj's audio.
Message delivered at the centenary celebration at Madras on 24th February 1973. We have assembled here on a very auspicious occasion to celebrate the birth centenary of our great master Samarth Guru Sri Ramchandraji Maharaj of Fatehgarh UP. We should utilize this occasion in getting into the master and master alone, which will act as food and tonic for spiritual elevation. Remembrance should be in a way that we feel the thought of remembrance oozing out from the objects everywhere. It is the real remembrance which mortals can have. It is a play for our good. Now a new chapter opens in the web of life. The effect of our deep devotion begins to resound in a way that we feel the ultimate is remembering us. That is the justice of divinity. When you have played your part fully well, the ultimate cannot fall short in playing his part. That is only a beginning of the higher sort of spirituality. As a result of it, our senses become summarized to have their own share in the being. This is my experience. When they are summarized, they become a new force for our regeneration. Now this is another instrument for our help. When this thing is attained, we have formed a base for our further approaches. It begins to modify itself when the effect of divinity starts to percolate. The base becomes a sort of force and begins to reinforce the substance required for our elevation. When the base is formed within us, the charging with its contents is also there, affecting the entire fiber of our being. These contents are the ingredients of real life, which we can safely call life in life. The main difficulty we find is that all our actions are directed unwisely. Actions are results of thoughts, and thoughts are our own actions. Truly speaking, we give wrong suggestions to the mind. People can object to it. How do we give such suggestions? The environment creates the circumstances to have such ideas. We move in that sort of environment. The rishis of yore used to recommend people to go into the forest or the hills where the environments are natural. The place recommended was to be far from human habitation. If one goes to a high peak of a mountain, he will only find a sort of echo and not any thought. Purity starts from being, and impurities are the result of the wrong suggestions and improper utilization of the inner environment. When all these are combined, a narrowness of views is affected, and this is one of the factors for creating a sort of confusion, sometimes automatically, sometimes forced by circumstances. When all these things are accumulated, they bring different colors. This affects the lower part of mind, which gives direction to higher part of it. Now your direction is not correct, so mind itself becomes thorny. We do not create congenial vibrations because we move contrary to reality. Before the world was born, a balanced state prevailed. When the balance was disturbed, we came into existence. I do not want to elaborate the subject metaphysically. The thought for creation stirred up near about the center, and energy began to flow out. What was that? That was the first mind, pure and simple, and that has woven all our frame and structure. It got purity with it, which it still maintains. So when we begin to give wrong suggestions, the mind, which is absolutely pure, expels them in order to maintain its eternal purity. That is the cause of thoughts. In reality, it sends out the contents which appear like a fog covering a certain surface. We call them thoughts. When we are attentive to the thoughts, their power develops. If any of you breathe the divine thoughts, mind will grasp it and will not eject them, because it is the real nature of mind, since it has come from the real artery. If a man wants to work out the problems of his life easily, he should give right suggestions to the mind. It is the condition which comes by practice and proper molding of oneself. It is very easy to remain in one's own condition, which is divine. It is the sure process for evolution. A little inclination towards the attainment of the reality will start weaving the future. There are many processes prevalent in India and they may be correct. But what is correctness? The process which may put you in the undisturbed state. Vibration should become all divine. How does it happen? When heaviness is gone, then only the thing behind the scene opens to the mind. If any of the methods brings about desired result, it is genuine, right and natural. Out of so many methods, you have to seek one for yourself which may bring out this state. If you are really trying for that and have got a real master, the things become very easy and good deal of time and effort is saved. People can ask how to get such a master. As an answer to it, I can safely say, how can one get such a disciple who may follow what is said above? I must say, for entering into the vast ocean, swimmers and swimming both are needed. So swimming is the part of the swimmer, and to teach swimming is the part of the master. We can get such a master as can lead us to the extent of his approach if we follow him earnestly. But really speaking, such a master is required as may be able to ferment us by his divine power. There are stages in the cosmic regions which we have to cross, and indeed we proceed to a certain length. Afterwards, the power of the Abhyasi fails to get at the subtle force. It is very difficult to cross it unless and until a push is given to the next step, and that is the master's work. I have come across many a person who argues with that in him which is not in himself. Some also say they have made their conscience as guru or master, but I am sure they have not made conscience as their guru, but their own ego. The conscience is described in the Shastras is made of four things: manas, mind; chit, deeper conscience; buddhi, cognition; ahankara, ego. If all these become perfectly purified, conscience will give you only correct signals. After the purification of these things, there come the higher powers, and at the same time purity has now begun all round. I hope people will excuse me if I add a little more in the context that incorrect way of worship will lead you to the incorrect result. We all desire for realization, but have no yearning for it. I pray that we all return to our original condition and see the difference between the earthly and the heavenly life.
We'll read 456 Pathway to Liberation.
Yeah.
We'll continue the reading session today. We'll read Dr. KCV's talk delivered in Allahabad on 9th April 1968. It is entitled Pathway to Liberation. Yesterday, I had the pleasure of speaking to you on the important aspect of Sri Ramchandra's Raj Yoga, which, in my opinion, is paramount as a significant contribution made by Sri Ramchandraji Maharaj, namely the spiritual transformation of man. That I call pranahuti or transmission, a method adopted for igniting the minds and souls of men to finer and greater achievement of the ultimate reality. Today, I wish to dilate on the supreme possibilities open to the seeker after the ultimate by this means, the attainments that he is likely to meet with on the path to total transformation. A prayer is always to the ultimate being to take you to his ultimate status. It assumes that the divine ultimate can descend and does so, not only in the large historical periods in the form of avatars, but also in the little incidents of a human life, an awakening in the heart of the Antaryamin within each one of us. A prayer uttered to the infinite makes it possible for him to enter into you, and this is done by the guru or teacher who does the transmission on behalf of the ultimate or as the ultimate itself. Therefore, prayer is a necessary preliminary to any spiritual puja or worship. It is an opening of the mind and the heart for the entry of God into you, an entry of the driving force of God into you, till finally it becomes a continuous stream or flow sustaining every activity of yours when you are awake or asleep, when you are liberated or unliberated, when you have transcended the body or entered into the great and brighter heavens. But the most important and significant feature about it is in the technique. That not only should you say the prayer once or only twice, but afterwards wait for the divine to do his task. I remember the great story where it was stated that an excellent devotee of God, who was rather addicted to the practice of chanting the names of God 1,000 times, had begun his chant. God came at the first call, but the devotee would not recognize it and insisted upon repeating and reciting the whole number of 1008. God said he can afford to wait, and so left. So it is necessary for you to wait for God rather than make God wait for you, even when you are very devoted and loving. This happens in every case when you think the ritual of number is more important than the practice and the realization of the presence of God before you, even before you call him. Any questions so far? We'll take a break. It is an opening of the mind and the heart for the entry of God into you, an entry of the driving force of God into you, till finally it becomes a continuous stream or flow sustaining every activity of yours. That point should be borne in mind. Now, if this prayer is properly performed, then with the deep sincerity and openness of heart, a transmission begins to enter into you almost at once. The most important thing according to our own practice and even according to the real works on the subject of spiritual upliftment show that by and large, when the divine force enters into you, whenever it is divine, the senses come to a halt and the mind almost loses interest in the objects which the senses bring to it. That is why this calmness settles in the mind and gently settles in the whole body. This means, according to the technical definition given in the Upanishad Mandukya, that we have passed from the state of Jagrat to the state of Swapna. The point to note again is the senses come to a halt and the mind almost loses interest in the objects which the senses bring to it. So we move from Jagrat to the Swapna Avastha. And from that state, in a deeper meditation and waiting for the flow of divine force within you, flowing throughout your system from top to toe, even as the blood that circulates in your organism, you will find that a deeper calm, almost an obliviousness to surroundings occurs. You are not aware even that you are where you are or that you are practicing meditation at all. It so much simulates your deep sleep that it is called Shushupti. The mind also has come to a halt then. What remains? It is stated that what remains is prajna. What remains is just prajna. This deep sleep state is also comparable, as I mentioned yesterday, to Samprajnata Samadhi of the yoga. Because it is not sleep at all. It is a sleep in the infinite or divine consciousness, where you have lost your way of being and your mind has ceased to function as an instrument of your needs, physical, motor, or sensory. It has turned inward. The senses that are usually turned outside, they come to a halt. The mind turns inward. Introspection, they say, begins, and there is no inspection. What do you inspect when everything has come to a halt? It is at that point in this system, by this transmission, that you begin to feel the presence of the flame in the heart, or the jyoti, antar jyotirya ameyam meyam, this inward light, the light that is divine that comes into you. The earlier two stages, if you might just call them in that way, cleansing processes, which reveal the light that is within, a flame that has to grow vaster and spread through your entire organism. Now, this is a condition where when our abhyasis sit for meditation and are lost in that condition, even at a slightest utterance from the preceptor, they come back to the normal state. They are aware, they are not asleep. This peculiar experience of the prajna is easily had in a normal way almost within a few weeks of the beginning of this method. And then what do you discover of experiences? Well, you have, as you pass through these experiences of the inner light, what you call the sense of traveling to higher planes of consciousness. And this again has been charted out in a novel way by Sri Ramchandraji Maharaj. It is not something that you find in any work so far published. All that you get from the other works is an arousing of the Kundalini and passing it through the so-called Sushumna that is said to be in the spinal cord, the vertebral column, and taking it through the 6 chakras till it goes to the Sahasrara at the crown of the head. This is the Tantric version. The Upanishadic version, on the other hand, tells you that there is a Susumna rising from the heart, or that particular nadi that takes you to the Brahmarandra and far beyond. So this is important. Babuji's method is different from what the Tantric people talk about. Kundalini or Sushumna Nadi, because I was reading Swami Vivekananda's commentary on Raja Yoga. He talks elaborately about prana and what is cosmic prana and what is the prana which drives the nervous system, vascular system and all that. And then he talks about its connection to how thoughts come up. He says the prana itself becomes an instinct, and later on he says it becomes a rational thought. But rational thought moves in a limited circle. Then he says in samadhi, the same prana moves into a super conscious state called samadhi or whatever. But then he also talks about how once you train the muscles by controlling the breath, with that you awaken the Kundalini and all that. He talks about the Tantric system there. But Babuji's system is totally different what Dr. Varadachari is pointing out here. Our Master Sri Ramchandraji puts it very clearly then that it is from the heart that we shall have to go to the crown of the head, not from the sacral plexus to the crown of the head. It is a fundamental difference in approach. So you can read Swami Vivekananda's commentary on Raja Yoga. He talks about Kundalini only. So it's a fundamental difference in approach. So what is opened up in this is the pathway to liberation. 1,000 nadis set out from the heart, but there is only one nadi that takes you to the crown of the head, the Brahmarandra. And some of us who have had the experience of the Brahmarandra know that it is not the only way of exit for the individual soul to infinity, but it is the way of entry of the divine into the very heart of being, into the heart. That's why the transmission, it enters from the crown of the head into the heart, actually. Now, this is a confirmation of the Chandogya and the Brihadaranyaka Upanishads. This experience then takes us almost to the cosmic consciousness that you may call the Brahmanda consciousness. You are made almost to feel that you are a citizen of a vaster world. Not only this physical world, but the astral worlds are opened up. And of course, these are all astral experiences because they are non-mental and non-sensory. We want to say that they are higher mental and higher sensory. I might be able to accept it, but they are certainly not of the physical order. When we go to that level of consciousness, we are aware of a new dimension to our personality. There only a sense of I-ness persists, and the body consciousness or the identification with the body almost ceases. So this is actually, I'll be quoting some of the experiences culled from the diaries of various abhyasis in my paper, which I'll be talking about life in life. They are real experiences which they have noted down in their diaries. Then you'll come to know that they're totally obvious. They'll have pain, but they don't feel like complaining about the pain. If they don't pay any attention, they're as if not aware of that pain. Though it is existing, it does not disturb them at all. It's clearly they have written in their diaries, actually. You're no longer interested in working out things on the plane of the physical, because at the level of the astral, you have got all that you want for inward knowledge to reach up to the highest point. It is necessary at this stage to point out that many people think that by going to such a level, they can bring the force and power of that consciousness for their own material purposes in this world. They want to use the powers of the higher inner life for outer manifestation and aggrandizement. And that is exactly where the yogis have warned us that once you take the inward path, it is dangerous to come down. It is almost tantamount to a fall, and the result is yoga brashtata. But some of us need not be afraid of it, perhaps. But if you look at it from the point of view of our ultimate aspiration to know reality in its truthness, then we have got to make a still higher approach to reality. And that approach to reality is a dimension beyond the cosmos. And to this level, most of the abhyasis in our system are led in the course of a few years. When they reach that level or arrive at that level, you find that they are quite a different type of men with a different purposiveness of being, devoted ultimately to the divine work. A love of God comes more freely to them than a love of themselves or a love of the world. Now at that level, when one becomes really a prapanna, as Master would put it, one who has totally given up himself to the work of the divine, there open up new frontiers of spirituality. Instinctive, compelling power comes into their thought, and they just want to serve God and just want to better the condition of ordinary humanity, whether without expecting any result. Compulsively, they'll be working for God, completely neglecting their self, almost to heroic proportions, actually, which we saw in Babuji and Dr. K.C. Sir also, we have seen how they used to work hard in spite of very bad health. Now at that level, when one becomes really a prapanna, as Master would put it, one has totally given up himself to the work of the divine. There open up a new frontiers of spirituality. It has been stated that much of that experience cannot be described at all. Firstly, because they are not natural to us, but they are natural to the divine consciousness. It is something that you have yourself to experience if you want to know the full meaning and significance of that experience. Now, this is the level you are taken up to. Up to this level, many people have taken us, perhaps, but beyond that, Sri Ramchandraji speaks about a level of consciousness which perhaps is not consciousness in the normal sense of the term, when it is confronting a prospect or an object. There is no longer a subject-object knowledge relationship. It goes far beyond that, where the subject, the object, and the knowledge are all one. But I think it is a meaningless statement for most of us metaphysicians who are yet thinking in terms of our ordinary knowledge. But it has been promised to most that such an experience is a possibility and the culmination of our experience. At this point, I could only remember the Upanishadic verse, Saparyagat Shukram Akayam Avarnam Asnaviram Shuddham Apapa Vidham Kavihi Manishi Paribhu Swayambhu Yatha Tatha Yato Arthan Yadadat Sas Vitabhyasa Manabhyaha. In this language, in which the Upanishadic seer of the Isa Upanishad has pointed out that subject can be transposed to be the object. A subtle play of the cases reveals the magnificent unity that is arrived at. When a person reaches that particular state, he becomes pure. He is the essence of whiteness or clarity or transparency. And what does he achieve? A level of seeing far beyond Kranta Darshi Kavi Paribhu Swayambhu, self-creating that being, all-widening being that he is. And what is more, he sees everything in their true eternal nature. And if every philosopher does really require the experience of reality as it is in itself, well, this particular consciousness which is transcendent in the real sense of the term to the cosmos must be experienced. It has been a statement, a vision. The practicalization of that has not been possible for most, if not almost impossible, for the pathway to that was somehow barred. Therefore, in the simplicity of his perception and vision, Sri Ramchandraji shows that to that point only the transmission of the highest personality can take you. It is a gift of God. It is the grace of God. It is an opening up of the body of God. Vivarnute tanum swam. It is an opening up of the very body of God. We enter into the splendors that are of God. Now, such an experience is within reach of every one of us with the help of the supreme transmission of the ultimate master. All this, it may appear, will demand only one thing from you: constancy of remembrance of your goal. I'll repeat again: constancy of remembrance of your goal, constancy of the guide, or the constancy of the remembrance of the guide who is with you, constancy of the sensitivity of the transmission that is being poured into you. That's why Babuji also, when he's talking to Chari, he was telling about when you're meditating, you have to be very alert. You should be sensitive to the transmission entering into your heart and be conscious of the changes taking place in you. Then sensitivity will develop. Then you will really enjoy meditation. I mean, a person has to be alert. Suppose you are eaten fully and then go to sleep. That is not meditation. He wants you to be totally alert while doing meditation. That's what he says. Constancy of the sensitivity of the transmission that is being poured into you. A constancy that requires a fidelity of experimentation and knowledge of the ultimate. That requires the status of a dhira. A dhira is one who has mastered the technique of dhyana, of the dhi. Technique of dhyana means you should very quickly come to the state of ekagrata vritti. That means your mind, your attention on the divine light should be constant for 1 hour at least. That means that is your mind has moved from vikshipta state to ekagrata vritti. Then after ekagrata vritti comes samadhi or nirodha. I mean, when samadhi comes, then all these divine possibilities start manifesting in your mind actually. A dhira is one who has mastered the technique of dhyana, of the dhi, and who is courageous enough to follow the light that is coming from within, the Dhi. One of the most magnificent verses which has been recited by us through the centuries is the Gayatri. But whom do you address thus? To the solar sphere. And to whom are you moving according to our own tradition? To the solar sphere and to the beyond. That is why the goal that has been set before us is the highest that the human mind could ever conceive of. And the means that has been given to us is the highest that the human mind could ever crave for. It may be a tragedy that we have forgotten all that knowledge. It may be said that the Sri Ramchandra's Raj Yoga is as ancient as the hills of this country, but we are getting it in the most purified form without all those adorations that have come into it by way of myth, by way of fantasy, by way of power, politics, and spirituality. Now I stated that this path of Sri Ramchandra's Raja Yoga takes up the frontal position, whereas the tantric system, as I also mentioned, takes up what is called the spinal levels. Many of you who are interested in spirituality might have been attracted to what is called Shat Chakra Nirupana and the other ways of such thing. Here again, we know from bitter spiritual experience during the last 2,500 years, I think from the time Tantric Buddhism developed vigorously, we know what extraordinary things have occurred in the name of Shat Chakra Nirupana and the experience of the chakras, the rousing of the Kundalini and the rest of those things. On these points, Sri Ramchandraji, mind you, the Tantric Buddhism and even Tantric system of yoga in our country, though it has helped develop arts and crafts and aesthetic beauty and all that, but it had led to a lot of degeneration, myth-making, mystery and all those things. Like people walking on the water, flying in all those things, and then, a lot of, it's no more a science, it is a occult factors have entered. It has earned a bad name in the sense. Correct thing was correct, but then human mind is very easily susceptible to get corrupted. Like these Tibetans have completely changed Buddhism. They have incorporated all the tantric systems into Buddhism, and that's extremely famous now in the Western countries. That Dokchen Buddhism, they talk about it. And just by the way, I'm telling. I think from the time Tantric Buddhism developed vigorously, we know what extraordinary things have occurred in the name of Shat Chakra Nirupana and the experience of the chakras, the rousing of the Kundalini and the rest of those things. On these points, Sri Ramchandraji points out that if you reach the higher levels by this path, automatically and naturally, all the centers in the back get illuminated. But then it is not by the rousing of the Kundalini you go up, but by the descent of the supreme force from the crown of your head downwards. It is not Shakti that has to move up to Shiva. It is Shiva that has to come down to those levels. That is why in this system, you do get the awakening of the Kundalini and all the centers, but they are processes of nature or of God and not your individual effort or business. His recent researches, of course, they are researches of nearly 14 to 15 years, have demonstrated clearly that the centers which he has pointed out are much more important in the downward movement by which from the center the force had moved out to the grossest portion, Adi Mooladhara. For what? For creation and the continuation of creation and procreation of the world. The force has come to that individualized point, and as it is known, you cannot lift it up by just pushing it upwards. They do not go that way. The easier way, as it has been found by him, and as it was understood by some of the Vedantins, was to rouse it from the heart and connect it to the Brahmarandra. Then from that it will flow out and downwards and correct your whole system. You become more and more moral, as it was stated by an eminent yogi, Sri Aurobindo. The downward movement of the mind has created all these disastrous tendencies which you call kama and krodha. In fact, our own people constantly recite Kamoha Karshit, Manuryal Karshit. They are not ours, they are nature's, and I am not responsible for their working. That is why every type of exertion to control these two forces only represses them and brings them out in worse shapes. That is why Master has stated that yours is not to touch these centers, but to go upward and these things naturally come under your control. Now, this is a very great discovery. They're helpful in evolution, but they're not helpful in involution. And the pathway of descent down the hill is more easy by jumping down. But the pathway up the hill is different and ought to be different. It must be a type of a spiral. Any man who has constructed a road up a mountain knows that the twists and turns by which he ascends to the height is the easiest way to go up. Though the shortest way may be, as in Tughlaq's kingdom, or as in logic, put a straight line between two and go there, as the funicular railway system tries to do. Now, we don't want to try that job because human nature is not intended for such experiments. On the contrary, the pathway of knowledge, merely taken, does not lead you anywhere. Every knowledge needs a practice, a kriya, and the kriya that we have to do is a prayer. The second thing is to meditate, by which we mean to receive the ultimate consciousness by way of transmission into you. And when it begins to its work, your goal is reached in the shortest possible time. And not only that, all the benefits that are said to accrue from the tantric sadhana and chakra nirupana are got in an easier, more natural and less disastrous way. Human nature has now the possibility of becoming divine with the divine's help. Human effort, I do feel, is necessary, but human effort that resists the divine movement is not likely to meet with success. Let then human effort coincides more and more with the divine way of ascent. That is why it has been possible for Sri Ramchandraji in the short span of a dozen years to reveal the central possibility of the method of Sri Ramchandra's Rajayoga, which is to help every individual to receive the transmission of the highest consciousness and further to lead him with his help, if he wants to have the appearance of individual effort, to go along with it, to reach the ultimate. All that the divine wants is a cooperation, not a resistance. And that cooperation is all that you have to offer when you offer a prayer and sit in meditation for an hour a day in the morning and half an hour in the night when you go to bed. Well, that is the easiest path which anybody can take and anyone can undertake. And the simplicity of the method, the sovereign result that it yields, verily makes it a Raja Yoga. You can read it again and again so that if you're not getting those conditions which Dr. KCV is telling about how your senses become silent and the mind goes into Swapnavastha, then goes to Sushupti, that means either you're not following the system correctly, or you're not doing the prayer correctly, or not watching the link which you have formed when your thought is connected to the divine light. Through that thought link only, the divine vibration comes into your mind. And if you're not sensitive to the entry of those divine vibrations into your mind, then you will not feel all these things. They want all read all people who are in this Zoom meeting to read it again and then try to evaluate yourself whether you got all those experiences or not. If not, you have to seriously think. You should go to your trainer and then ask what's happening. Anything, Dharmesh? Anybody else wants to talk and contribute something to this discussion?
In this Swapnavastha or the deep sleep and Prajna, right? He says that's the beginning, right? And after that, he has explained.
Yeah, because even when we are seeing so many people in the meditation, they seem to be, enjoying the peace. They don't want to come. It is a kind of a Shushupti stage only. That means the mind, even though a lot of thoughts are coming, they don't have the power to distract your mind. But then if they do the cleaning properly and then practice constant remembrance, not allowing new formation of samskaras, it's very easy in Babuji's system to go into Shushupti state. But then for that, you should do regular cleaning so that if you miss one day's cleaning, third day it becomes much more difficult to clean, and then progress will be arrested. Okay, then if nothing, we'll meet next Sunday.